The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Para-X, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
I'm horror author T. Fox Dunham.
And I'm horror author and filmmaker Phil Thomas.
And tonight we're asking you,
what are you afraid of?
I am Darcy Ort, author of Haunted Philadelphia, and this is What Are You Afraid Of? Horror and Paranormal Show on Para-X Radio, 9 p.m. on Friday night.
And we are back. Fox.
Yeah.
How are you?
Not too bad. It feels like I just saw you.
I know, I do too. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been a week.
It has been.
But it was a very short week.
Yeah, time.
That's the shortest week I've ever
Time has
experienced.
stretched.
That's right.
You know,
Where's your DeLorean?
We're near a black hole.
Where's your wormhole? Where's
My
your DeLorean?
wormhole. I don't. Not a personal question to ask.
Yeah, time travel, wormhole.
Wormholes, time travels, Einstein, Rosen, Cybermen on Doctor Who.
That's right.
You know, that was a great way to finish up Peter Capaldi. So,
and this is what are we? This is episode 53. Philly Ghost Stories Part 2.
We've lost count. You know, it's pretty.
53. Can you believe that?
Yeah. You know what I can't believe? 107 million spiders were found in a 4-acre nest in a Baltimore wastewater plant.
You know what? I feel bad. I feel bad for the person who counted all of them.
Yeah, I have a feeling they took the square footage and
somebody
said
just counted 100 and what did you say? 4 million?
104. Actually, I'm saying 107 million.
Oh, 7 million.
I guess they recounted.
Oh, okay.
95% of the building's interior, which spans 4 acres, were covered in these orb webs, and they could estimate by the amount of webs how many spiders there were living in this house.
Wow.
And I don't think there was a single insect for like 6 square miles.
Jeez. Oh my God.
No, I don't know. But I mean...
Oh, I thought that was actually...
No, I don't know.
Okay.
But they are venomous.
I could imagine that,
yeah,
though. I mean,
no, they weren't venomous, though. But can you believe that?
No, man.
Could you walk into a place like that and see,
No.
a million spiders?
No.
You know, what if they turned into a hive mind and came after us?
Oh, God.
You know.
That would not be, yeah.
That would
not be good. You ever see Arachnophobia?
Oh, of course.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, with Jeff Daniels.
Right, yeah.
Right, and the
John
great John Goodman.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That was amazing.
Do you have a fear of spiders? Are you okay with them?
It depends on the spider. Because, like, if it's a little spider, I have a connection to them and I want them to live. Mm-hmm. But, you know, you come out and you see like a wolf spider or a brown recluse or one of those big things that's looking at you.
Have you ever seen one?
Yeah.
In person, you've seen one?
Yeah, I've seen one.
They're down south primarily. Yeah. And I saw one down in Tennessee.
And they're dangerous to me. You know, with the heart condition from the chemo, it's like I get bit by bad venom, I'm out.
You're out, yeah.
So
brown recluse gets you, you're done.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people would be, you know.
Right.
Yeah, it was sitting on a barn.
Oh.
And my cousin was there. We were going in to look at the grill. We were like basically at a cabin in the woods down in Tennessee.
Right.
And we opened it. He didn't know what it was. I mean, we saw a couple spiders. Mm-hmm. And I pointed at it. I said, "You see that spider right there?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "That's a brown recluse spider." Like, what's that? He didn't know what it was. So I actually put it up online. I showed him what it can do to you. He's like, "Oh, dude, I'm getting away." he took off, man.
Evolution succeeds.
That's right. Yep.
But we're back with Darcy Ort, author of Haunted Philadelphia. Welcome back, Darcy.
Hi, Darcy.
Thank you.
It feels like we were just talking to you.
I know.
It does. It's like, it's time just flies so quickly.
It's the wormhole.
Yes, it is.
We've opened up a wormhole. We found spiders inside.
And then I did not go through that wormhole. I was like, I'll take the next one.
Yeah, she'll get the next one.
Okay.
When it comes to wormholes. So Phil had asked you a question. By the way, we ended that show with a great story from Chestnut Hill College, which is in Germantown, where my wife works right now when she's going through school, and another scene from the Music to Teufels. And now we're back with more of your ghost stories from your book, Haunted Philadelphia. And Phil had asked you what you thought the most haunted site in Philadelphia was. And you had said...
I said Fort Mifflin.
Mm-hmm.
Mainly because of it's longer haunted places.
Longest haunted? Yeah.
And, because history dates way back to almost it's like a few years after it was built, and it still continues. So when you talk about Philadelphia hauntings, you have to talk about ones that have a very long history.
Right. The older places. Like you started with Old Town in the book.
Mm.
Yes.
And a lot of the places you do hit, I'm looking through it, it's all places that have a longer history. Like there's no part of the book that says the haunted condos of Philadelphia.
I don't do stories where I can't give you the location, because I'm somebody who I want to know where it is. I may not actually want to go there, but I want to know where it is. I want to be able to pull it up on Google Maps and see it and have that physical connection. And I also want to make sure that there is numerous accounts, that it's not just somebody's like, oh yeah, I saw a ghost last night, and really wasn't,
Yeah, I actually love the style of your book too, because it kind of acts as like a pocket tour guide.
It does.
Where you could just take it with you down the city and just let it be your guide.
One day go to North Philadelphia, maybe not get out. One day go to Old Town.
Right.
You
could literally, it's like a blueprint to where, you could. Right. It acts as your own personal tour guide.
It does.
Yeah. And that was because I wanted it. It's when you're a fan of ghosts and you write ghost stories, you want a book that you would take with yourself. It's like, and that's what I always felt like. If I'm going to go to Philadelphia with my ghost book, I want to be able to pull it up and go, oh yeah, it's right here.
Well, you give the addresses for each one.
Yeah, and that's
which is incredible for the tourist, but if there's someone living there, it's probably that Darcy.
I think there was one place that's like a private residence, but it had, and I'm trying to remember which house it was. And I tell people, but it had such a history, and the person that had lived there before had so popularized the ghost there that it was like, I'm sorry, I got to include your house. You bought the house knowing the history. You're just going to have to deal with it. And I actually tried to reach out to the current owners, and they didn't respond. But yeah, I don't, if it was a private residence, and it was always a private residence, and I didn't dig for the address. It was one of those, these were things that were pretty much made public, and or are public locations. I don't want people to don't trespass, please, because that's just rude, and that gives everybody else a bad name.
And respect the sites of Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Yes.
We have a lot of history, and the history's got to come first.
Mm-hmm.
We've been here for a couple hundred years. Founded by William Penn.
That's right.
When he was land granted from King Charles II for a debt fought in the British Civil War, and he brought over his religious experiment of Quakerism. Mm-hmm. Something I've partaken of myself.
Right.
And we love our history in Philly.
Oh, we love it, yes.
Yeah, we do. Of course, with a lot of history, you got a lot of ghosts.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Right. So, when you were doing these stories, and you went to these sites, did you actually encounter anything paranormal yourself in Philadelphia?
I am a self-proclaimed psychic, and so when I'm doing research for a book, I tend to kind of turn it off, because I am somebody who I'm very much I'm very skeptical. Mm-hmm. As much as I believe in ghosts, and as much as I believe in ghost stories and all that, I am somewhat skeptical. So I didn't want to put myself into the book, and I didn't want to have I wanted to be things that people could take and really believe in. Sometimes when people are like, oh yes, I went there and it was so haunted and I had all these experiences, you kind of like, yeah, I don't think you did.
Right.
I'm skeptical that way. It's like,
I think some people they just want it so bad they kind of imagine half of it, and then there's those experiences that are legitimate. I don't know.
And there is that, if you go looking for ghosts, you tend to find ghosts. And so it's one of those things where, and having been a ghost tour guide, I had a lot of times where people were like, oh, look, it's an orb. I'm like, no, that's actually just the street light right there. And, I have people too that sometimes they'll send me a picture of this orb in their house. I'm like, it's my ghost now. I said, yeah, no, and I can recreate that photo for you. Especially I always tell people look, take around dusk, put your flash on your phone, go outside, throw a handful of dust in the air, and then take a picture, and you'll see your house, your backyard full of orbs.
Right, right.
Well, let's do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It works every time. It's like, and you're like, because orbs, which can be ghostly phenomenon, are most often dust, rain, insects.
That's right.
You know,
it's funny you
pollen.
say that, because that was actually going to be my next question for you. When you just answered it. So I was going to ask you, orbs, what are they? Are they dust? But you just did it. So yeah.
It's one of those things where most often it's natural, and it's one of those things where you kind of have to look at. Usually I look at, say, like, look, it's got to be something that you can kind of look at. I have orb pictures where I have one like where it's like the orb is moving back and forth and is green, so it's like kind of a different kind of an orb. So you're like, okay, that, and can't really explain that one. But
if you put flash on your camera and you go into like a dusty basement and you just take pictures, you will get a billion orbs, because I've done it before. But what it really is dust.
Yeah.
That can be speculated as something else.
If you get like a hair or part of your camera strap in front of your camera, it'll look like a little glowing curve. You got to be careful. You got to debunk your own stuff, and that doesn't mean the place isn't haunted because you debunked this one thing. It just means that's not evidence of it.
Right.
And so, and if you can do that, you're way more credible than if you're just like, it's a ghost. And that's part of my problem I have with most ghost programs. After about like the second or third year, they get so desperate for ghosts, they stop debunking themselves.
Right.
And it gets to the point where, like, yeah, you need to stop buying into your own, your own beliefs, and just say, look, you can get real stuff if you just weed out all the other stuff.
I like what you do, Darcy. I mean, we've had a lot of paranormal investigators on the show, but I like your approach. I like your research. I like the history. I like you listen to other people, and you even turn off your own psychic investigative ability to get to the core of the matter.
Yeah.
And that's what makes your book so good.
And thank you. It's like, people didn't buy my book to hear my paranormal experiences. They bought it so that they could possibly have their own. And I hope that they do. And I hope that they go to the sites and appreciate the sites and do have, even if, you don't always have to be a paranormal investigator. Sometimes you just want to have a ghost experience. And so you can go and just say, and have your own experience and enjoy it and make that site even more special.
Well, we've got a ghost story from your book, Haunted Philadelphia. Another one read by our British folk singer David Walton. This is in Philadelphia, or it became Delta Phi Epsilon. This is at 251 Carmack Street. It's off Broad Street. And it's read by David Walton on What Are You Afraid Of? Horror and Paranormal Show on Para-X Radio at 9 p.m. on Friday nights, and found on all major podcast download services.
Your source for everything paranormal. Para-X.
In Philadelphia, Delta Phi Epsilon, 251 Carmack Street, off Broad Street. Researched and written by Darcy Oort in her book Haunted Philadelphia. Used with permission of the author and read by David Walton. If your name is George Lutz, be careful when purchasing real estate with a tragic history, or you may risk being haunted. At least that is the trend in New England. First, it happened when a George Lutz purchased a house in Amityville, New York, or so he claims. Then it happened in Philadelphia when a different George Lutz purchased a building on Carmack Street with his partner Phil Orkowski in 1993. The building had been unoccupied since 1987 after a disastrous fire destroyed the Deux Cheminées. The restaurant reopened a year later down the street. Almost immediately, the new owners experienced unexplainable phenomena. 3 weeks before the opening of the new restaurant in Philadelphia, Lutz was in the building alone when he heard footsteps walking above him. Fearing an intruder, he called his partner to come down to check things out with him. The two found no one in the building. A few days later, workmen were on a coffee break at 7:30 a.m. when they heard voices on the second floor, followed by a crash. The men rushed upstairs to ensure everyone was all right. They discovered a large painting in the hallway. Somehow, the painting had flown across the room and smashed into the wall with enough force to damage a freshly painted wall, but no one was on the second floor at the time. The building was part of 12 row houses built in 1825. They were eventually transformed into 6 double-wide private clubs. Through the years, the building housed a number of private clubs and restaurants, including the Poor Richard's Club. Rumours say the tunnel running underneath the 200 block of Camac was once part of the Underground Railroad, but this has never been proven. As time went on, more and more people in Philadelphia experienced the ghosts. The prep cooks refused to leave the kitchen when they were in the building alone because they heard voices and other sounds on the second floor. Other staff members reported hearing doors opening and closing, or voices coming from unoccupied areas of the building. And then there were the continual reports of the distinctive sound of step-drag footsteps. According to Lutz, a few months after opening, the previous owner, Fritz Blank, came for a visit. He told Lutz that when they were preparing to open the Deux Cheminées in 1979, his father helped him renovate the building. His father loved carpentry and formed a real connection to the building. He also walked with a distinct limp. Sadly, his father had died shortly before the restaurant opened. It appeared his ghost was still looking over the building. But while that explained the footsteps, Blank's father didn't seem the type to do some of the more prankish activity in the restaurant. After all, he loved the building and wouldn't want to scare people. But not all the ghosts felt the same way. In October 1995, a bartender and the night manager were closing. The bartender went upstairs to one of the dining rooms when he heard the door to the ladies' room clang shut, although no one else should have been in the building. He went downstairs to find the manager, but when they arrived in the Franklin room, they saw the 2 grand chandeliers rotate wildly, stop suddenly, and then rotate in the opposite direction. The 2 grown men fled to what they assumed would be safety. After all, the hauntings occurred on the second floor, not the first. Oh, were they wrong. Suddenly, music filled the building. Somehow the sound system, which had been off, had turned itself on and the volume up. The 2 men had enough. Without bothering to finish their duties, they turned off the sound system and lights, secured the building, and left. Then there was the night a woman patron dining in the green room complained that someone kept pulling her hair. She and her husband assumed one of the servers was the guilty party and complained to Lutz. As they were talking to him, the woman's head jerked back and she cried out. Her hair had been pulled again, but no one was close enough to do it. On another occasion, the ghosts did not appreciate the performance of a New Orleans singer at a party. As she performed, items the staff needed disappeared. Then, 3 plates shot off a stack and smashed against the wall. Some people claimed to see the ghosts. Often they would claim to see a shadow moving about the room. In addition, in April 1996, 8 people waiting in the bar witnessed a ghostly man walk out of the Coke check room, pass across the bar and then fade into the wall near the piano. When Lutz investigated the hauntings, he discovered he was not the first resident to experience them. The previous owners admitted that they had also experienced the ghosts. Perhaps that was why the Deux Cheminées chose to reopen a half block away after the fire. The Inn Philadelphia has since closed and was purchased in 2006. The purchase was good for the building, bad for ghost hunters. The new owners did extensive renovations and restorations on the interior and exterior of the building, which is currently known as the Acanthus Building. After owning it for a few years, they sold it to the Delta Phi Epsilon, a sorority which made the building its international headquarters. When contacted, a spokesperson with Delta Phi Epsilon said they were unaware of any issues with the building.
Your source for everything paranormal. Para X.
Hi, this is Tim from Comic Zen. We're located at 301A West Main Street in Lansdale, right near the intersection with Susquehanna Avenue. We have new comics, old comics, graphic novels, including comics made just for kids, action figures, statues, comic supplies, board games, card games, and much more. We have a special order service for both comics and games, and we have a comic subscription service so you don't miss your monthly issues. So come to Comic Zen. Just don't upset the samurai ghost who haunts the store.
And guess what, kiddies? Foxy and Philly will be recording live from Comic Zen in Lansdale every first Friday of the month. So come down and see us at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Well, not then, because we will be recording live for the Philly Foxy Haunted Spooky Hour on Para X Radio. And bring your ghost stories a little before or a little after, and we'll be glad to collect them at Comic Zen. Fridays, first Fridays, at Comic Zen. Comic Zen in Lansdale, PA.
We've all experienced messages from beyond the silver veil, whether we want to admit it or not. Some people take no notice, ignoring these outreaches. Others embrace them, seeing them as evidence of an expanded universe. Whether these stories frighten or comfort, we are reassured.
The mission of What Are You Afraid Of? Horror and Paranormal Show is to explore the dark side through paranormal investigation, folklore, and the arts. The show is an audio magazine. We share true ghost stories, dark fiction, interviews with ghost hunters and indie authors, filmmakers, artists, and musicians. We discuss industry issues and offer support. We have a unique and varied theme that creates a show unlike others.
Our weekly show is featured on all major podcast services, including iHeartRadio, iTunes, and YouTube. We are a part of Para X Radio.
We need your true ghost experiences. So write them down in an email, preferably under 2,000 words, which comes to about 3 or 4 typed pages, and send them to whatareyouafraidof117@gmail.com. Please don't attach them as a file. And don't worry about trying to write like Charles Dickens. Just tell us your story as if you were telling a friend. And if you're not sure if it's actually a ghost story or not, but it's still weird, send it anyway. Also send us your photos, EVPs, recipes, your thoughts, and any artwork.
Check out our website at www.whatareyouafraidofpodcast.com for our ghost story archives, articles, photos, and expanded material. And you can buy t-shirts, mugs, laptop covers, and animals apparently with our logo on it. Follow us at Twitter at PFWhatAfraidOf. That's PFWhatAfraidOf.
You cannot escape the darkness, so explore it with us now at
What Are You Afraid Of?
Speaking of Haunted Philadelphia, Phil.
Yeah.
September 16th.
Oh, yeah.
I know, I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too.
It's going to be good. We're going to go down through some dust in the air.
Yes, we are.
At Fort Mifflin. It's going to be...
Some dust in the air and called orbs.
And called orbs. We did capture an orb down there, remember?
Yeah, we did, yeah.
Yeah, so we don't know what it was. We just said, this is what we got.
Yeah.
Here it is. Could be dust, could be the lens. It looks like what people call an orb.
It does. Yeah, it does.
Does it have the veins in it? Can you see, or is it
it has like a...
We'll have to put it back up.
It does have veins, yeah.
It does have veins?
It probably is not.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't think so? I have no idea if it had
might
veins or
not
not. I know it had wings. Do you think that's significant?
It's
Did not have
yeah, I
wings,
mean,
yes. Actually, maybe it did. Bat wings, right? No.
Bat wings, yeah.
It had like a little. Yeah, I think it did have veins. It had sharp edges, and it had like a glow that kind of pulled out from it, and it had like what you would call like maybe like an eye or a crater in the top left. I think it was.
You know where you got that?
Yeah,
that night?
I don't know. I don't know what it was. I've seen many orbs that are dust. It looked a bit off from those, but we'd have to look at it again.
Yeah, we'd have to.
I mean,
yeah,
it might not. It might
put
just
us a
be
picture and
dust.
say this could be an orb.
But
we don't know.
this wasn't. It was out in the middle of like a field.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. I mean, there probably was some dust there.
I'm wondering. I sometimes wonder if it
knows?
wasn't a reflection off a light off a plane.
Yeah, there was a lot of planes.
Because you go down to Fort Mifflin, you're right behind the airport.
Yeah.
So it's like I remember recording
it's like
that.
nonstop planes. Yeah.
It was like we would talk it into something. We'd both hear a plane and we'd go quiet.
Yeah.
And then have to cut out so many plane sounds.
We're gonna have a lot of airplane noise when we do the live show, but
It's ambiance.
yeah.
But that's September 16th. Get your tickets. There's going to be an event all day with tables. We'll be doing a sort of coverage for a couple of hours, talking to people and hanging out. And that night, the Paranormal View will be recording. There'll be a live ghost hunt, and we'll have our author event at Haunted Fort
That'd be fun.
Mifflin
That's gonna be fun.
from 6 to 8 with some great HWA authors. And one of them is our friend James Chambers. He's an incredible award-winning author, tales of horror, crime, fantasy, science fiction. He wrote the Bram Stoker award-winning graphic novel, Kolchak the Night Stalker, based on the original, Derek Gavin. I'll put both in so I can cut one out. Yeah, he's a member of the Horror Writers Association, the current chairperson of its membership committee, and the recipient of the 2012 Richard Laban Award and the 2016 Silver Hammer Award. He's from New York. He'll be there on September 16th, and I sat down with him for a few minutes on the show, and here's that interview.
Your source for everything paranormal, Para X.
Mercy, a new horror medical thriller from author T. Fox Dunham, published by Bloodbound Books. Based on the author's horrific battle with a rare form of lymphoma that involved intense chemotherapy and radiation, Fox turns the horror of his experience into terror on the page.
William Saint is dying of cancer. On most days, death seems like a humane alternative to the treatment. Stricken with fever, William is rushed to Mercy, notorious as a place to send the sickest of the poor and uninsured to be forgotten, and finds the hospital in even worse condition than his previous visit.
Willie's memories faded. He grabbed his sack head of the scarecrow, picking at the exposed chicken wire to hold them in. However, the memories fell out of the holes in his face. They wormed and crawled from the leather flesh and the old clothing of the scarecrow, then squirmed and wiggled down his body.
The grounds are unkempt, the foundation is cracking, and like the wild mushrooms sprouting from the fissures of decay around it, something is growing inside the hospital. Something dark.
Fangoria gives Mercy 3.5 out of 4 skulls. Dunham has channeled his many brushes with the other side into the exquisitely rendered, lyrical, supernatural hospital thriller Mercy.
It's feeding on the sickness and sustaining itself on the staff, changing them, and now it wants Willie.
Come now, Mr. Saint. Just a little more of that sweet milk. So salty and so good. You won't miss it. And we ever do so like our delicacies here at Mercy Hospital.
Part medical horror, part supernatural suspense, Mercy is a hard-hitting fever dream of a novel. I enjoyed the hell out of it. Tim Wagner, author of The Way of All Flesh and Eat the Night. Available from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and bookstores everywhere in both print and digital versions.
Life is an addiction.
Let go. Let it all burn.
He's been on the show before, and we're really glad to have him back. In fact, not just on the show, but he's coming down to Philly on September 16th at Fort Mifflin, one of the most haunted sites in America, to do a horror reading with some of the other guests who have been on What Are You Afraid of Horror and Paranormal Show. He's James Chambers. How are you tonight, James?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Fox.
Oh, thank you for joining us. It's great to have you back. Yeah, I know you were on the show before we did the event in Philadelphia. The Dark Ones Rise Again, I think it was, and that will be coming onto the show as part of a 2-hour special, as part of our reading series, in like a month before the event at Fort Mifflin. We're really glad you could, come down to Philly and talk to us. So how's your career been going?
It's been going very well. Some exciting stuff has been happening. I wrote a graphic novel called Kolchak the Night Stalker, The Forgotten Lore of Edgar Allan Poe, which was published late last year. And that actually won the Bram Stoker Award for Graphic Novel earlier this year, which was exciting.
Congratulations. We posted that, actually.
Thank you. I'm working on some new comics and graphic novel projects, most of which are too early in the process for me to talk about. But I also am working on short fiction, which I've always written. I have a couple of novels going. I have some short stories coming up for publication I'm excited about, including one that will be in Shadows Over Main Street 2, coming out sometime possibly this fall, I think. The pub date isn't quite definite yet, but that's a collection of small-town Lovecraftian horror tales.
And that's put out by D. Alexander Ward and Doug Moreno, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I was in the first one, and I know that it's taken a little while to get the second one going because they had to change publishers midstream.
Correct.
But it's nice to hear that it's going to be coming out. That's fantastic. Okay, so how does this process work between you and an artist?
It varies depending on the project and depending on the artist. For the most part, I write what's called a full script, where I actually break down the page by page, panel by panel, and provide the artist with a description of what should appear in each panel, what the captions will be, what the dialogue will be, and they work from that as kind of a roadmap. With some other artists, one in particular I've worked with for a long time, we've actually just started working in a looser fashion where I'll just send him a page-by-page overview. So instead of breaking everything down and writing the captions and dialogue up front, I just send him kind of an overview of what happens on page 1, what happens on page 2, and I leave it to him to arrange the panels. And then he sends the art back to me, and that's when I write the captions and the dialogue. So there's two different ways of working that I'm doing right now, and both have their advantages and disadvantages. The second one, which is a looser way of working, I'm more comfortable with working with an artist whose art I'm familiar with and whose style I know.
So that sounds like quite a different process than just writing short fiction. So you have to be a bit of a script editor, too. Do you have any aspirations for film?
In a loose sense, I'd love to see some of my work adapted for film at some point. There are a handful of stories in particular that I've written that I think would really translate very well to the screen. I've tried my hand a couple of times at writing screenplays, and I enjoy it. I like writing screenplays, but I think one of the things that is most important to me as a writer is to get out into the public, get into a reader's hand, the story that I want to tell. Everything I've read about and everything I've experienced regarding film is that very often whatever story you write in the screenplay goes through any number of changes and revisions and metamorphoses before it actually hits the screen.
Right. That's an experience I'm having myself.
How is that going with your film?
The director has been picked and signed on. The script is just about done. There's always, whenever they sign on somebody new that has some influence over the project, they always want to look at the script and suggest changes themselves. But they're working out the financing now, and between you and me and generically some of our guests, shall we say, the project is going to be a lot bigger than I'd originally understood years ago. And they're beginning to contact acting agents. And when I see the names of the people they're starting to negotiate with, you just get a little giddy and can't believe it's happening. So it's kind of...
That's exciting.
It's been a long process, and I've had to have a lot of faith, but I believe when the final thing happens, it'll be the event of a lifetime. So, well...
It's terrific, but it's also that kind of balance between something that is taking years to kind of come together, and I'm sure you've experienced this contrast too, sitting down and writing a short story, and it's often, to an editor within a much shorter amount of time, maybe a few weeks.
Oh, definitely, and it's just the only way I can survive it is by focusing on the work at hand, trying to build other aspects of my career. We've seen a lot of changes in publishing, especially in the field of horror. And I know you have your finger on sort of the pulse, especially in New York. You know, a lot of people, you get down to the events. Could you tell me how you think publishing has changed even more in the last year?
It's interesting because I was thinking about this recently just in regards to a recent call for submissions. I guess one of the genre's legendary editors, Stephen Jones, who for many years has edited the Year's Best Horror and the Mammoth Books series, which the Mammoth Books, for anyone who hasn't read them, were these terrific anthologies that he published, I know in the 90s. I can't remember if they went back as far as the 80s. But they were just really big, thick anthologies of horror fiction, basically a who's who of the genre at the time they were published. And he would do them loosely around a theme like werewolves or zombies or something, and there were some really fantastic stories in those. And I guess over the years, publishing has changed so much to the point where that kind of anthology is cost prohibitive because of the number of stories, because of the caliber of the writers that Stephen Jones would include. But he really has wanted to get this going again. And I saw a post from him recently opening up a new Mammoth book, a Mammoth Book of Halloween stories. And it's going to be done with an established publisher, a mainstream publisher, but it's using a very unconventional payment rate and system. And it's much more like the kind of payment structure you see at independent presses, where there's a smaller upfront fee rather than a professional word rate and a pro rata share of royalties. And I think what struck me about that was just how much the industry has changed. And it does seem to be accelerating in this direction to the point where it's very difficult to find a publisher willing to put money into projects in the genre, in horror fiction especially, that are not the next big thing. Certainly publishers are always going to have the advance money and the marketing budget for Stephen King or Clive Barker, or even for some of the newer authors who have really connected with wider audiences like John Langan and Paul Tremblay. But for something that is more contained within the genre, like a Mammoth Book of horror stories, it seems like the support that traditionally has been there, even for an editor as accomplished as Stephen Jones, is getting less and is diminishing regularly. And so that kind of struck me. And I think that's the biggest change I've seen, is that I think the gap between support from mainstream publishers for genre publishing specifically versus genre authors who break out to mainstream readerships, that gap is growing.
And do you think that's because of e-publishing, the ease of transition of material now?
I think it's partly because of e-publishing. It's harder to sell physical copies of a book that isn't a big event book. And the mainstream publishers, I think, really still rely on print sales as a significant part of their business model. A lot of the smaller publishers, the independent publishers, are probably, and I know some that where this is the case. I can't speak for them widely, but I do know some publishers where the e-books are what drives their business model, and print is sort of a secondary track. They want to have print for conventions, they want to have print for author signings, things like that, but they sell more ebooks.
How did you promote Kolchak?
I primarily did it very grassroots. I just, everywhere I went, I talked about Kolchak. I was incredibly encouraged to learn how many people remember the character, remember the original TV show, which ran only for one season around 1974. There were 2 television movies and then 1 season of the show. And so if you didn't watch it in that original run, you had most likely seen it in reruns, as I did, off bootleg VHS tapes in the 90s. More recently, it's available on DVD, and it was streaming on Netflix, and I think now it's rerunning on MeTV. But I was surprised how many people really remembered the character immediately and had so much affection for it. And so I just started talking to people at conventions, talking to people online, talking to people anywhere I went that there was interest in horror or interest in comics or books. I set up a Facebook page and just kept information on the project going up there on a regular basis, just kind of updates, glimpses of artwork, previews, status reports about how the project was going. Took previews to conventions. So it was very grassroots. It was very just me hitting the ground and talking to people and posting online, and culminated, I guess, in, this is a kind of a funny story, a bookstore up in Massachusetts was interested in having me come up to do a signing shortly after the book came out. The book was published in December, and we set the signing up for January, which, in retrospect, never planned on anything in January in Massachusetts.
Right.
Especially when you're driving up there just for the day from Long Island. I wound up having to drive 5 hours in a blizzard just to get up to the bookstore that day because the weather reports were so unreliable. I was optimistic and thought the snow wasn't going to be as bad as it was. But I went up there and did this signing in a small bookstore, and a handful of people came, which was great. And it was one of those things where, in retrospect, I probably should have canceled. But on the other hand, the book was just out, and my excitement was high, and you never want to risk canceling and then people show up and you're not there, and leaves a bad impression. And the silver lining is that I greatly increased my skill at driving in the snow.
Oh, so. Well, you see, that's multitasking. You're writing and you're driving. That's fantastic. So you're coming down to Fort Mifflin, which of course is one of America's most haunted sites, and we've got quite a cast of authors who'll be joining us. I know you're coming down, and you've suggested Megan Acure Moran, she's coming down, and I was able to ask Shannon and Peter Giglio if they wanted to drive up from Georgia, so they're driving up, which is quite fantastic to have them. And of course, Phil and I will be there. Have you considered what you're going to be reading for us?
I've been thinking about it. I have a few ideas, and I like to wait until closer to the reading date to pick my reading selection, and I think a lot of that just has to do with waiting to see what kind of mood I'm in. But I have some fairly dark pieces that I think would be good for this. One in particular is a Halloween-oriented piece that might be fun. So yeah, I think there's a bunch of stuff I'm considering. I'll probably wait until that week to really pin down what to read.
Are you going to stay behind afterwards for the ghost hunt?
I don't think I could possibly pass that up.
Yeah,
it just sounds phenomenal.
It's quite exciting, and it's about a group of they have 40 people they have a limit of 40 people, and I was there for the last one. And it's different groups who sort of circulate around the site. You sort of catch things yourself, or other people will catch things and they'll come and share it with you. And it's a really exciting event, and it's dark and it's fun, and it's a wonderful way to open Halloween.
That sounds great. I've never actually done anything like that, so this will be a terrific opportunity. And I hope some of the other authors will stick around for it, because I would love to do that with some fellow horror writers.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I forgot to mention John Foster. Yeah, he'll be there too. He's always at our events, so I just assume he's with me and Phil. So, but yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting and unique experience for horror fiction authors to be part of a ghost hunt.
Yes. And Fox, I have to thank you so much for putting it together. The whole event sounds fantastic. I know it's a lot of work on your part. I'm grateful to have been invited. I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, I hope I won't let you down. Doing best. Well, thank you, James, for joining us. And what's your website at? Where can people find your material?
JamesChambersOnline.com.
And this has been James Chambers on What Are You Afraid of? Horror and Paranormal Show on Friday nights at 9 p.m. on Para-X Radio.
Your source for everything paranormal. Para-X.
Caliburn Press, LLC is a Madison, Wisconsin-based publishing company owned and operated by Alan Ledden. Caliburn works with talented writers, artists, editors, and marketers throughout the United States, and you can find their books through their many imprints that include Damnation Books, Eternal Press, Malaferia Press, Ciento Sordida Publishing, and Spiro Publishing. please visit their website at sites.google.com/site/Caliburn Press LLC/home, or Google Caliburn Press to check out their growing list of titles on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and any other place fine books are sold.
Rat, where are you going?
I'm going back to the Paranormal View, back where I belong.
Please, take me with you.
No, I'm through with everything here. I want to see if there's something left in life I haven't explored. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, Rat, don't run to them. They talk about ghosts and hauntings, UFOs, and all kind of supernatural scary stuff.
You'll never understand, will you, Scarlet?
No!
Well, that's your misfortune.
Rat, if you go, where shall I go? What shall I do?
Frankly, my dear... Line!
Oh, you gotta be kidding.
That's the Paranormal View with your host, Henry Foister, Jeffrey Gould, Kat Cloco, and Barbara Duncan. Every Saturday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the Para-X Radio Network.
So James is great.
Oh, yeah, that was great.
You know, he's been on the show before, and...
Well, speaking of the reading,
okay,
former Flynn, have you decided what you're going to read from, as far as what work?
Probably Mercy.
Pull from? Okay, that's cool.
From Bloodbound Books.
Right. I'm undecided what I'm going to do. Poe Predicament.
You should read from the Poe Predicament.
Or Worst Afterlife Ever.
Oh, read from the Poe Predicament, because that's coming out. Right. You got to start supporting that.
I do. Yeah.
You know, any date on that yet, Phil?
No.
What about you're doing another short film though, right?
Yeah. No, there's no date on it yet.
Okay.
I just you know, I was talking to Alan. He's the CEO of the company.
Yeah.
I need to ask him, like, you know, when can I get a lockdown release date?
Well, get
on.
Because
I'm in the queue. I mean, it's coming up.
Get onto your promotional director, man.
Yeah.
Tell him that Phil's the promotional director at Caliburn.
Yeah. Yes.
It's always fun when when you're getting a book ready, and like as the author, you have very little control over it. You're like, I wrote this. It's like I spent all my hours creating it. Like, yeah, no, it's ours.
Best thing to do is just wait.
You write it and then it's theirs, and you know I'm basically at their mercy.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
And you will continue to be. You signed over your rights, my friend.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm at the mercy of when they want to put it out. They did send me the cover a couple months ago, and the cover looks amazing. You know, so I know it's, you know, I'm happy with that so far. So,
no, I actually have a funny cover story about Philadelphia ghosts.
Oh, please.
The Haunted Philadelphia.
Oh, good.
Is that the original picture they sent me is what the book has now, which has, you know, a City Hall on it. Well, then we're going to change the picture, and they changed the picture to one that showed more of the statue on top, which is, William Penn. But something Philadelphians know about the statue is that if you hit the right angle, the hand looks like a different part of the body.
Okay.
And it looks like he's peeing on the city of Philadelphia.
Oh, so that's William Penn's wormhole.
Oh, man.
And so when they sent me the picture of the cover, the new cover, of course the photographer had taken that exact angle.
Of course. Yeah.
And there was like a yellow light, and so it really looked like it was like glow. And I had to. It's like, yeah, it's great. However, but by the way, I'm going to tell you something, and once I tell you, you're never going to be able to unsee it. But yeah, kind of, you know, the angle there, and so
you will never be the same again.
Over cropping that part out, and I was like, okay, so who are you going to talk to about castrating the statue? Can I have a recording of that conversation? Because I'm pretty sure you probably have never had this issue with another book cover. And so next thing I know, they went back to this cover. And I love this cover, but it's like one of these things I was like, things you don't expect to have conversations with your editor and your publishers about, hey, can we take the penis off the cover?
No, I didn't expect to have that conversation with you.
That's not a conversation I would expect to have with my publisher
but it's nice to be warned.
Yeah, it's good.
You know, about that.
Can we airbrush that out or something?
Yeah, we'll airbrush that out. We'll just put up the big black dot.
They decided not to airbrush it out. They decided to just use the original photo. I was like, They could
have sold it as Quaker erotica.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where I just knew it was going to come back. Somebody's going to put like, we can't have this book. Look, if they don't know at the statue that it's really his hand, you're going to be like, why? Why is that on there?
See that. That's great. That's great. That's funny. I mean, it's one of them things where, I don't think most people would notice it, but there are always those people that would.
Right.
There's few.
Phil,
once you see it, you can't unsee it. I mean, It's like once you now you can't not see it. So I would have always been looking at it, going, oh yeah.
But besides your book, Phil,
yes,
you've got a new film you're working on.
Yeah, it's we already shot it.
Okay.
But we're going to be we just have to edit it and then release it, and it's called Loose Ends, written by Ryan McGinley, and directed by Matt Brooks, and myself. And I was also a cinematographer on it.
You filmed it.
And it's kind of like I think I told you about before. It's kind of like I told you, but I didn't tell them. It's kind of like a noir style crime type of we shot in black and white, which would be pretty interesting. And I actually watched Casablanca about a week or so before we shot it, just
to see Casablanca.
Yeah,
play it again, Sam.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I rented it on Blu-ray.
Okay.
And last time I've seen it was like VHS, so it was definitely interesting to see it look so good.
It does.
Just the lighting and the black and white and the rich. Oh, it's great.
And Bogey. Yes, I could never see Bogey in color.
No. He just works well in black and white.
So we'll have a link. By the time the show comes out, it should be up. This is episode 53, Philly Ghost Stories Part 2, and it should be up.
Yeah.
So we'll have it up on the site, and you'll have it up on your YouTube channel.
That's correct, yeah.
Our website at www.whatareyoufraidofpodcast.com, where you can find expanded content, a lot of our ghost stories with audio versions, information about the authors, where you can find Darcy's books.
Right.
And her website. You'll find links there, and please go pick up a copy of Haunted Philadelphia.
Yeah, and the YouTube channel that you can find it at is Film Zero Presents. And check it out. I mean, we've got a lot of other stuff up there too. And Fox, what are you working on now? As far as
I'm starting a new book.
Okay, good.
I've been struggling for months trying to get into something, and I've been a horror author for a long time. It made me a lot of money, and I just said, screw it all. I need to have something I can write that makes me feel good. So I started this comedy sci-fi space adventure based on Joseph Heller's Catch-22.
Okay.
And it's already accumulating word count, which is nice to see. Yeah. So I've got a lot of short stories coming out. In fact, at this point, when this show comes out, go look at the science fiction magazine online, Solar Sidle. You will find my story, The Mud Jury, which was about the time I sank that kayak in Cape May in the back mud fields. Remember that? I was so upset.
That's right.
and just to let everyone know, I kayaked successfully in Ocean City 2 weeks ago. I was on the bay.
Yep.
And I survived and did not sink.
That's good.
Nor was I eaten by crabs, which is the basis of the story.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
But speaking
I thought the title was interesting when
The Mud Jury?
Yeah.
Check out the short little piece, and I sold it to Solar Sidle, so go check it out.
It's kind of neat. Just the whole, the mud is the jury.
Judging this woman who poisoned this land and destroyed the town, and then she goes back and kayaks, and it's if you go back into the Cape May wilderness, and you're back there on these, in the wetlands and these very isolated mud streams, and I sank it. I'm just lucky my phone worked.
You did sank it, yeah.
Because it filled up with water. I sank 3 feet, but the mud was so bad that it sucked me down.
It was very end of the summer last year.
Yeah, it was. It was September.
September, yeah.
And if my phone had been working to call the guy, I don't know what I would have done.
Yeah, you're lucky it was working. Yeah.
And it's very isolated, and all I could think about was, I'm going to die here, and all the crabs and the birds are going to eat me.
Oh, God.
And I'm thinking to myself, if I got out of this, I got one hell of a short story to write.
That's right. Yeah.
We've been speaking with Darcy Ort, who's coming back next episode in our 3-part Philadelphia series. So we will see you all on episode 54. This has been episode 53, Philly Ghost Stories Part 2. Thank you, Darcy, for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, Darcy.
See you next week.
Well, Philly, this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Nice.
Da-da-da-da-da-da.
Always have Paris, right?
Right. We'll always have that.
I'm Phil.
I'm Rick.
You're Rick.
I'm Rick
today.
What's his name? Rick, right? Yeah, it was. Yeah. No, yeah, it was Rick.
Yeah.
It's all right. Yeah.
Your source for everything paranormal. Para X.
Women Are Horror.
T. Fox Dunham lives in Philadelphia with his wife Allison. He's a lymphoma survivor, cancer patient, modern bard and historian. His first book, The Street Martyr, was published by Gutter Book. A major motion picture based on the book is being produced by Throughline Films. Destroying the Tangible Illusion of Reality or Searching for Andy Kaufman, a book about what it's like to be dying of cancer, was recently released from Perpetual Motion Machine Publishing, and Fox has a story in the Stargate anthology, Points of Origin, from MGM and Fandemonium Books. Mercy was recently released by Bloodbound Books. Fox is an active member of the Harvard Association. He's been published in hundreds of short stories and articles, and his motto is Wrecking Civilization, One Story at a Time.
Phil Thomas resides in the suburbs of Philadelphia and is an author and filmmaker. His screenplays have been produced into feature films such as False Face and Always from Darkness that are available in major retailers such as Best Buy and Target, as well as availability on Netflix and Amazon On Demand.
The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Para X, its affiliates, or its sponsors.